left.
Yes, there's things left.
Welcome, everyone. Now that it is 4 o'clock, I'd like to call this meeting, October 3rd, 2020, the executive meeting to order, and recognize that Prince Albert is located within Treaty 6 territory and is the homeland of the Dakota and Métis. We extend our respect to all the Indigenous people for their valuable past and present contributions, and recognize and respect the cultural diversity within the city of Prince Albert. We need an approval of the agenda. One item is being removed. Bill is not available. 5.1 is being removed. So with that, can I have someone move the agenda? Councillor Head?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll go ahead and move that agenda with that addition, or lack of addition, I guess.
Thank you. The vote is now open. Councillor Lennox Epp?
In favor.
Thank you. Motion carries. Declaration of conflict of interest. Everyone knows what they're supposed to do if they do have a declaration of conflict of interest. Adoption of the minutes from the last meeting. Mayor Dion.
So moved.
Thank you. The vote is now open. Councillor Lennox Epp?
In favor.
Thank you. Waiting for one. Thank you very much. The motion is accepted. Next item, the consent agenda. At this time, is anybody wanting to remove anything from the consent? Councillor Cody?
Yes, I would like to lift 6.1, please.
Thank you. Any others?
6.3.
Councillor Zurkowski, 6.3. Any others? Okay, with those two removed, would someone, Councillor Ogrodnik?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll move the remaining items.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Moving to the vote. The vote is now open. Councillor Lennox Epp?
In favor.
Thank you. It's carried. First item from the consent agenda is Councillor Cody. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yes, I note that there's a letter has been received by Minto Bowl with regards to a fire hydrant that they need to put in because of the fact they've put an extension on their property. And as you will note in the letter, it indicates that they've had no fire hydrant at the present place since 18 years ago. And now they're building an addition, and they have a requirement for a fire hydrant. So I also note that the resolution was to receive and refer to the Planning and Development Services Department, and I'm going to make a different motion than that. And I would like to move that the city pay the cost to install the required fire hydrant for the property located at 201 13th Street East to be funded from fiscal stabilization and or present budget that may be in place for fire hydrants.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing no, sorry?
Any budget that is
considers is available.
Yeah, that may be available
To fund fire.
for, yeah. That's good.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Cody. Any discussion?
Tara Lennox up.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. Question for administration. Wondering if administration could advise if we were to proceed on this, if administration has any pros or cons or thoughts on this for us, please?
Go ahead, Director.
Thank you, Councilor Cody, for the question. The pro would certainly be that there's a fire hydrant installed on a building that does require one. So that's certainly a good thing for fire protection and life safety. When it comes to timing and those types of things, I can't speak to it, but certainly, yes, absolutely, our requirement is that a fire hydrant be installed.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Lennox up?
No, thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Grodnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Sorry. I just want to make a comment. I thank Councillor Cody for the motion, and I think this really helps us support small businesses and these business people in our community that have struggled for the past few years, and I think it's a good gesture, and I thank Councillor Cody for bringing this motion forward.
Mayor Dion.
And I also, too, will support it strictly because we've already done one to help small business. And as I mentioned at that time, these are public fire hydrants. So if there's a fire in that area, the fire department can hook up to it. So I don't believe one business should pay for something that's a universal in our city. So I will be supporting the motion as well.
Thank you. Any others? Okay, with that, we'll move to a vote. We will move to, oh, there it is, found it. Patience is a virtue. The vote is now open. Go ahead, Councillor Lennox up.
In favor.
Thank you. The motion carries. The next item is item 6.3 on the consent agenda, brought forward by Councillor Zurkowski. Go ahead, Councillor, or go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Related to this item about the potential for increased cab fares, some of the questions I've had, and I didn't know the answer, so I'm going to ask them. I believe it's every 3 or 4 months the cabs are inspected by the city. So I wonder if we can just talk about that process about cab inspections and what happens if there is concern during the course of the inspection. What's the next step? There are some communities that, you know, if there's a dent on the bumper, they're required to take them out of service right away. If they're not cleaned, they're required to take them out of service right away. So maybe in terms of inspections, what happens after that? And do we do surprise inspections, on-spot inspections, that sort of a thing? Thank you.
Go ahead, Director.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Zurkowski, for the question. The Department of Planning and Development Services took over the licensing of taxis roughly a year ago. So within that time, we have established a new process and a new standard for for not only our taxi bylaw, how it's upheld, and also how our taxis perform on a day-to-day basis. So what we do is we plan 2 taxi inspections, one at the beginning of the year and kind of late spring, and that is the main taxi inspection where they have to show us all of their documentation and licensing requirements and things like that. And then we've got one in the fall. Actually, we've got one coming up here in about 2 weeks where we thoroughly inspect the taxis on the outside and the inside for cleanliness and adherence to our bylaw. And not only that, but our taxi drivers are properly licensed and supply us with proper documentation. So We've gotten quite good compliance up until this point. I think the first time we did it, there were about 12 taxis that did not pass and were not able to continue operating. And then the last time we did it, we've only done it twice. I think we were down to about 4. So I think the messaging is getting out and it is improving. But to your point, you are not able to operate a taxi unless you adhere to our taxi bylaw. To answer your question about surprise inspections, we do not do them right now. I'm not suggesting that's something that we won't do. Right now, we've got an established process of 2 a year. That may certainly grow in the future, depending on need, but that's the process we follow right now.
Thank you. So in terms of cleanliness on the inside, is there a period of remediation, or are they required to take them off the street immediately and then comply? What sort of process is involved there?
Essentially, what we found is that the cleanliness issue isn't one that can't be resolved within a very short period of time, a week, for example. So what we would do is we give them a week or some determined amount of time to get the vehicle cleaned, get it painted properly on the outside, mechanically it needs to run properly, things like that, and then we do a subsequent site visit and meet them and go over the taxi once again. So the turnaround time on that is quite quick.
Okay, so they're required to have that follow-up as well. It's not, the onus is not on the city, the onus is on the driver or to come back to the city and re-inspect.
Exactly, yes.
And that bylaw is available on the city website, so folks, members of the public can take a peek?
Absolutely, yeah, and I encourage them to.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the motion. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I do understand the need to offset some revenue. I do support the motion because I don't think the rate should go up, but I do understand that they're losing some revenue because of driving and dashing. And I know some of the information that I've got is it happens fairly regularly. And wondering if we would be the body that would implement that you must pay a minimum fee prior to moving that cab.
Go ahead, Director.
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. So in the bylaw that we currently have, there are certain levels of responsibility. There's the taxi driver, the license holder, and there's the broker as well, and then there's some responsibilities of the city. Without doing some research on that, I can't suggest where that would fall. It would certainly be require an amendment to the bylaw, and ultimately it would be brought to City Council for approval. But whose responsibility that would be, I'd have to do a little bit of research on that. And upholding and enforcing the bylaw is another thing we'd have to look into, because tracking that would be somewhat difficult. But I can follow up with further information as required.
Yeah, and I think if this body implemented it, it would make an even playing field, because one company may want that and the other company may not. It might give that other an advantage. So if we could check into that at some point, that would be tremendous, and maybe have that discussion with the companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Dion.
Well, I have 2 points. Number one, I really support surprise inspections. I've taken a cab now twice this week, and I don't think either one of them would have passed an inspection. And I'm quite sure when they know, like you said, another one's coming up, they're going to correct those deficiencies. And one of the cabs I got into had put down on the front a temporary fix, an linoleum kitchen floor, a used one. Like I wanted to get out of the cab, but I was late for my appointment, and so I had to go. But I really support surprise, because it's no different than if you own a franchise or if you're renting a house and I'm coming to inspect it on Thursday, it's going to be clean. And so I do really support surprises. The other thing that I would like to change in the Bylaw Act is that they have to put a sticker on the front of all their cabs, inside the cabs, that says if you have any complaints about this cab service, please call, and we should have a phone number. Because I get lots of calls asking where we can complain about the cabs. And we don't have a number. So all I do is I give them either the owner of the one company or the other company. But I think at the same time we need to be tracking those complaints. You know, it's just because we don't know how many there are, and that could be a concern. And that might support us doing more surprise inspections if we get complaints about how filthy some of the cabs are.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything further? Seeing nothing further, we'll open the vote. The vote is now open. Councillor Lennox Zepp?
In favor.
Thank you. The vote carries. Next are reports of administration and committees. The first one is 7.1, the landfill cell construction completion report. We have a PowerPoint presentation from Nicole Miller, the Capital Projects Manager. We'll just wait for the PowerPoint. Yep.
Good to go.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Deputy Mayor and City Council, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide you with the completion report on the landfill expansion project. As many of you may recall, in 2020, administration brought to City Council's attention that we were running out of landfill space and it would reach capacity in 2021. This would have resulted in us no longer being able to accept municipal waste. It became imminent that a new cell needed to be designed and constructed in 2021. Administration also became aware that waste material had breached the cell liners and needed to be rectified as part of the design. The area where the waste had breached the cell liners was located south of cell 1A and 2A and east of cell 1A, as shown in red on the site plan. This realization led City Council approving administration to begin the design process for the expansion of the landfill in 2020. Tetra Tech was awarded the landfill engineering design, and City administration worked with them on a design that would best suit the landfill taxpayers. The design, which included expanding the existing cells 1A, 2A, and 1B, was completed over the winter of 2020-2021. Shortly before the project went to tender, the designer and upper management in Public Works was made aware that concrete had been buried in the area north of cell 1B that we wanted to expand to. The city dug test holes and tried to establish the volume of the concrete that was buried and included the estimated volume as a quantity in the tender. The tender went out for bid, and Tervita, which is now known as Secure Energy, was awarded the tender. Similar to when you are completing a bathroom or kitchen renovation and you find that the piping is lead or the flooring underneath has got black mold, this is what we experienced in the landfill expansion project. There were unforeseen unknowns found during the project. The first unexpected item was additional buried concrete that had to be removed. This additional quantity resulted in extra amount of brush, grubbing, and stripping of topsoil so that the contractor could excavate clean fill material and place it where the buried concrete was located. This additional volume was 25,000 cubic meters and cost the project an additional $155,000. There was also additional overburdened waste that was found that had to be removed. The total cost for all of these items was over $450,000 more than what the project had budgeted. These amounts were paid based on the unit rates the contractor had bid on for the tender. The next unanticipated item that was found occurred on the south side of cell 1A, where leachate discharge was found. Leachate was breaching outside the cell liner and had to be had to be rectified immediately to meet both the city's due diligence and the Ministry of Environment's requirements. The total cost to rectify the leachate problems encountered during the project was $130,000. The final item that resulted in cost overruns to the project was engineering supervision. When the design was awarded for the landfill expansion project, administration estimated that it would entail 40 days of construction supervision. With the expanded project scope, buried concrete removal, and overburdened waste removal, these caused the days of site inspections to increase, resulting in an additional cost of $214,000. In closing, substantial completion of the landfill expansion project has been reached, and the final outcome is that cell 1A has been expanded to the east. Cell 1A and 2A have been expanded to the south. Cell 1A has been expanded to the east, and cell 1B has been expanded to the north. The total for all these expanded areas will allow for over 10 acres of new municipal waste disposal, which will provide for an estimated 20 years of service before another cell expansion is required. The project discovered and resolved an unknown leachate discharge, which would have never been found. And lastly, the Sanitation Improvement Fund balance will remain with a surplus of $930,000, meaning there's no requirement to increase the sanitation rates for the municipal taxpayers and users. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation. If there are any additional questions.
Are there any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Head.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you for the report. I do have a few comments, I guess, and I want to say, first off, thank goodness that we don't have to increase rates on this project. Looking at some of the costs, I realized that the project was identified in the summer of 2020, and that project, that motion came to council shortly thereafter, asking for the $6 million. And again, I said it was a Hobson's choice then, and these reports are the same thing. I do want to comment that, I feel that this could have been managed better. Looking at the additional cost of $534, why wasn't that coming to council? Why didn't we have a discussion on that additions of the project saying, hey, we just identified that there was a concrete being landed or buried there. Yet we knew that for the last couple of years that the contract's been buried there, at least the staff did. So I'm not sure all the staff was consulted with. I know you referenced the previous sanitation manager saying that he didn't notify, but I mean, our operations were happening on a daily out there, and we had moved that pile years ago. So I think some of us knew that was happening, or at least that it was there. I can appreciate maybe not all administration didn't know. Looking at our contingency fund, I thought that would have been the reasons, like if these overages come up, that covers that. But it looks like we've surpassed that. So I think it's poor planning and poor foresight in this project. And I hope that we don't see more projects like this going over budget. It's not a small amount. It's significant at almost $1 million. And half of that was the fault of our own not properly planning. And so I am really disappointed in this report. I'm happy that there's one good thing coming out of that. We don't have to raise increases. One other thing. So why didn't that change order, I guess, to the administration? Where did we see any change order, any motion coming towards about the $455,000? I guess that might be a question I would ask.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question. The reason that a change order wasn't brought forth for the concrete removal and excavation and backfill is that it's a unit rate. So the contractor is paid based on what the unit rate cost is. Some of the costs are up and some are down. As I had brought forth in my report, there were also bid reductions of $200,000. Until the project is done, we don't really know where our final numbers stand. I had brought a couple reports forth to City Council, being the leachate discharge one and a change order for electrical. And at that time, we still had $2 million left to pay Tervita, or Secure Energy. We had we had paid them, but at that point, there was still $2 million sitting on the table for the existing tender. So I wasn't at a point where I knew what the exact numbers were.
Okay, well, thank you for that answer. And, you know, looking at the pictures, it did improve our landfill, so I'm happy about that. Yeah, I guess that's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Dion.
Well, I'm not prepared to vote on this item today. I have some serious questions to the director. It's not the employee's fault here, it's the director. It's the director that knows the process and the reporting that council requires. And I'm sad that the director's not here. And so if I'm forced to vote, my vote will be no. But what I do is I'll wait to hear from other members of council. Otherwise, I'd like to delay this item till the director's here. Mr. Head brings up some good points, but I have further good points to bring up. I have one more set of minutes to listen to, and I am looking for it because I have written notes. When they brought the change order ahead for the $250 for the electrical, I challenged the director then, when is this project going to stop bleeding? Is this it? And he said yes. Well, that's not the case. So I would like to hear some more from council, their concerns, and if there isn't any and no one wants to move this motion, I'll come back and make a motion that we defer it to the next meeting when the director's here so he can answer the questions.
Okay, are there any other questions? Councillor Zurkowski.
Well, I'm not prepared to support this today. I may not be prepared to support this in a month. There's something about our processes that need to be reviewed to prevent this from happening again. The concrete was discovered before the tender went out. Was there any thought? Was there any consultation within the department to stop the tender from going out at that point until more homework could be done, until more research, some more investigation could be done? This is not a small dollar amount, and I'm not prepared to support that today either.
Okay. Any other comments? I have one myself. In reading the report and thinking about this report moving into the future for people, you know, the report is written to us and to the residents to help them understand. In the report, I don't understand the quantity overage. I do now that you have, you know, talked about it, but in the report itself, I think spending some time making sure that the report is user-friendly for residents, even an asterisk at the bottom that says, you know, this was not in the bid process. This is a quantity of, you know, that we looked at later, would be extremely helpful for me to explain to residents. So that is my point. There are two others. Mayor Dion, go ahead.
Well, most of these bills have been paid already. There's only about $100,000 left outstanding that hasn't been paid. So I'm going to move that we table this item till the next executive meeting for the director, Wes Hicks, to be present to answer questions. And the reason I added that last part, if he's going to be away, then I want it tabled again. The whole purpose is for him to come and answer about the process and reporting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I do support the recommendation that's now on the board here. I guess what disappoints me a little bit is we knew about the rock prior to the tender going out, and we didn't have that discussion in council. I know that we doubled the size because we could save some money, and I don't know whether doubling that size took us into the rock. I think I remember that discussion. I wasn't really in favor of going bigger, but there was some savings. So I don't know, I guess I'm just expressing my disappointment that we never got this prior to going to tender and have that discussion, and maybe we could have altered things. So just expressing my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Thank you very much
Thank you.
for your presentation, and with that, we're going to move to a vote. The vote is now open. Councillor Lennox Epp.
In favor.
The motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item number 7.2, Public Transit Bus Procurement Options, a verbal presentation by Mohammed Krishan, Engineering Services Manager. We'll just wait for the PowerPoint. Oh, there it's just a verbal. Almost the perfect. Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Deputy Mayor and respected members of City Council. Back on July 18th, at the executive meeting, City Council has requested administration to look into some procurement options for public transit buses. So we did look at some options for new buses and used buses as included in this report. However, allow me to start just with giving a little bit of a background about the transit situation here. As you're aware, back in April 2021, that's when the frame deficiencies were discovered in the city's vicinity 7 buses. And once they were removed from service due to those deficiencies, we had our transit operator supply us with 5 shuttles that we leased from just to maintain our transit service. So those 5 shuttles, they stayed in service until October. And in October, we purchased some used school buses. And we actually had them join the service to continue maintaining our service, as the other 5 shuttles that we received from the transit operator had to actually return back to where they came from. And in November 2021, administration did an internal review just to see what options we have in the market for new and used transit buses. And actually the spreadsheet or the results that we found is included in this report at the end. And in November 2021, actually, we did start that conversation with Grand West. That's the vicinity buses supplier, and they supplied us with 3 buses as a warranty, under the warranty claim, basically. So they sent us 3 vicinity buses to add to our service until the warranty and litigation process is resolved at that time. But that process, the litigation process, continues until today. And the time came up actually in July, where they requested their 3 vicinity buses, and they got returned in September after they got inspected. In March 2022, we did reach out to First Bus. They proposed 6 leased buses to us that they brought from the States. And they were brought in March, and they had to actually Canadianize them in order to suit our environment here in Canada. So they had to be repaired and modified to pass inspection and safety. The first bus we saw joining the service was in late June 2022. So this is a little bit of a background about the transit. And I would like to add also one piece of information here. We are actually also adding 2 more leased buses that first bus will bring to the city here within the next 10 days, hopefully. Those two buses, once they get in Prince Albert, they will have to be repaired and retrofitted to make sure that they do meet our needs here. So in total, we're going to have 8 leased buses from First Bus, and also we do have one old city-owned bus, which is called New Flyer. That's just the name of the manufacturer. It's not a new bus. And we did a few promotional events. One of them was back on September 1st. That's when we offered free transit citywide and to promote basically students going back to schools. And we welcomed students. And that day actually did see the highest ridership rate since March 2020. So overall, as a general trend, we do see an increase in our ridership, which we're really happy about to regain that ridership back. And as you can see in the report, the options here, there's one option for new buses, and the cost per bus is roughly $700,000 for a new bus. And for a used bus, it's actually somewhere between 100 and 200,000 or in that range. So we brought this report to City Council here for their consideration and for their directions going forward. I would like to note that the 2010 transit bus that we do have in our fleet is due for replacement for 2023. So in the fleet budget for 2023, you will see an allocation of $700,000 to replace the 2010 city bus. So that's part of the fleet replacement program that the city has. And by the end of 2022, the transit fleet reserve would have $850,000, and if City Council decides to replace the 2010 bus that we currently have, that money will be reduced to $150,000. Thanks so much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mayor.
Receive and
Dion?
file.
There's been a motion to receive and file. Okay, thank you. Councillor Zurkowski.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. This is all important information that will help inform us in our decision-making going forward. But the number one issue, I believe, for the public and the parents out there is the communication piece between what's happening daily with the buses out there on the road and their child standing at the bus stop at 8 o'clock or 7:45. So knowing that the city doesn't operate the buses, we don't operate them, that's a third party, what can we do to support the operation of those buses, the operator of the buses, so that we can work on that communication piece to get something out there to 8 o'clock in the morning, at least, so that we can let folks know, let parents know, let students know, let people know when they need to get to work that there's an issue with the buses. Either the driver there's no driver there, and again, we don't operate the buses, there's a third-party contract, but things like I'm hearing there's no bus driver today, so they have to cancel the bus, or the bus is taken out of service because there's an issue with the bus, needs to be repaired. So irregardless of whether we purchase additional buses, it's that daily communication that I think will make a world of difference to a lot of families and a lot of people trying to get to work in the morning. So I appreciate the recommendation and the spirit of the report, but if we buy 3 new buses tomorrow and no bus driver shows up, it doesn't matter. There's still no bus operating. So is that piece being worked on? What can we do as a municipal government to support the operator so far as that communication piece, that daily communication in the morning?
Go ahead, Manager.
Thank you for the question. And actually, we did start working with our transit operator, and we emphasized to them the importance of timely fashion notification and updates, so we can because the city would issue those communication updates to the public. So we need to know those beforehand and then start working on update, having that update out before, let's say, 8 a.m. or before students start, right? But actually, we would like to send them right away once we receive them, even if we receive them earlier than 8. Let's say if we receive them at 6:30, that's when we like to send them out. And so we did emphasize that to our transit operator, and they have been cooperating. And actually, it used to be a little not as perfect as we have it these days. So they have been cooperating, and we thank them for that. And I do apologize for the most recently issue that had happened here lately because of communication. We did get a somehow late update, and that's when we reacted. It was a little late for the public. We do apologize for that, but we'll continue working with the transit provider to make sure that we do receive these updates.
Okay, so we're still in the working
Time.
with the, yeah, thank you for that. So we're still in the working with the service provider stage, where we're not ready to let the public know, commit to the public, look, we're gonna have a daily communication before 8 o'clock in the morning. We're still in that sort of relationship stage with the service provider?
Well, by what I meant by saying we're still working with the transit provider is basically we just make sure that they understand the importance of the city issuing these updates as early as they happen. Because sometimes I do understand that the nature of the interruptions, mostly if a bus breaks down, right? As long as we know of that issue right away, and then so the city can actually react by issuing those transit updates, that's exactly our goal. And that we will reiterate that importance to them to make sure, because those are basically the transit provider, that's where we get really those updates from. So we'll make sure that situation is stated to them regularly about the importance of this.
One of the things about this job that continually surprises me is the lack of authority, influence, power sometimes the corporation, the city has, period. Pause. This may be one of those cases where we are dependent on the efforts of a third party to communicate that so our residents aren't left in the lurch when it's minus 20 out. Is that fair to say that?
Just to rely on the third party to issue those updates.
Yeah.
That's something we have not considered before, but that being said, I mean, it might be something that we look into, but we do have an agreement, a contract with the transit provider, and that is not one of their responsibilities.
Right.
But it's something that we can keep in mind and see if it's an option to actually have on the table. But under the current contract, that's not their responsibility.
Councillor
My
Zurikowski?
sense is, yeah.
Sorry for the interruption. Your question was about communication. Would you like to hear from the communication director
From anybody.
about communication?
Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead, Director.
Thank you. So I wanted to just make a quick comment that this was raised this morning by the City Manager's Office. So I think there's two things. The one is the commitment from the transit provider on those updates, and that's an ongoing process, and it sounds like that's improving, but we need those updates to communicate. So that's key. On our end, though, I think what we got to the bottom of this week is just maybe the way that those updates are going out could be a little bit better, that when you hit that page, you're not always sure which is the most recent update. So we are looking at that. We're going to start a new process this week, see if we can just get something that works for us and for the public. So that part's under review too, just so that you know, so that information, when you go to that page, it's the information you need to make a decision that morning on whether you're sending if you're going to the bus stop or not.
Right. Okay, thank you for that, and thank you for that. So, you know, my sense is our third-party provider are acting in good faith, but somehow we just need to, look, folks, we need to communicate the good things that we're doing and the good things we're trying to do and make that a priority. So I appreciate what's been said. I wonder after today, when we all go home, if we're going to have an update about this process that we've heard about today.
Go ahead, Director.
Yeah, we can share that with members of council.
It'd be
so you
nice
can
to
see it.
brag about some of those good things we're doing and the service provider are doing, because I think that's important. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zurkowski. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have several questions. Just to stick on the communication aspect of things, though, with some of the regular riders, and now that we're really transporting students, there's apps available where you push a button and say the buses aren't running. I don't know whether we could look into that, where it goes directly to their phone instead of people going to look for whether they're going or not. I do know the schools use that. So when school buses aren't running in the winter, and we're going to find buses aren't going to run in the winter, for sure, it happens, they just get a notification. It's a mass notification, and it works. I get the darn things, and I don't ride the bus. I don't like that. I don't think we need that, but something that maybe we should look into is something that goes direct to the ridership. I don't think it would be that difficult to implement. The current buses that we're leasing, how much are we paying for those buses?
Currently, we pay $1,000 per bus a month.
So 12,000 a year per
Yeah,
bus.
$12,000 a year per bus.
Yeah, okay. And we're leasing 6 of those.
We have 6, and we're
gonna have-
anticipating to receive 2 more. Yeah.
Okay. Are there other leasing options available for newer buses?
We have not come across any other newer buses that we could lease, but these buses we're leasing through First Bus here, the transit provider.
Right.
So they're the provider and the operating, I guess, of
Okay.
these buses, but we haven't seen any other options.
I noticed that you have a picture of a Nova bus. Is that the bus you're recommending that we would get?
Well,
If we went
the
new?
Nova, that's one of the buses that we would recommend. I mean, a further report will have to come forward once we know that's the direction actually City Council is moving, is purchasing and procuring additional buses. Nova bus, that would be an option, yes. And then also we do have the New Flyer brand. That would be another option. But that's a whole procurement review process that will have to take place. But yeah, these are some of the options that are feasible.
Okay, so the Nova, yeah, well, we were going to get a report, but the Nova bus, is that Canadian? Or are parts available in Canada?
Well, I cannot answer that question if it's Canadian or not, but I know it is being used in Canadian cities, so parts should be available in the Canadian market.
Okay. So I do know the New Flyer parts are in Winnipeg. So that's something that we should be definitely considering, that parts are close by and we can get them. Then some of the options here, the 2014 New Flyer, how quick could we get that bus? And how many would be available?
I think we're including the delivery, and that's the 2014 you said?
Yeah.
Option. The delivery, it would be a few months for that used bus.
A few months?
Yeah. I think it would be safe to say 3 to 4 months. But those ones, the 2014 one you're looking at, that was the review that we did back in September.
So it might not be
So
available.
we do have a review in November 2021. But the first attachment, that review we did in September 2022.
So we don't know for sure whether the 14s are available?
Well,
At this
even the ones that we did last month, we don't know for sure if they're
Yeah.
still available.
And when you're looking at them available, do we know what work would need to be done on these? Because we haven't had well, some of the buses have needed extensive work that we've brought in.
Yeah, probably I would imagine they would come with an inspection report that would allow us to see what needs to be done.
Yeah, okay. And
But still, probably further inspection would still need to be required to verify the inspection report. So it wouldn't be as easy as we might think.
right. And the 2008, you quote in there 190,000. But the kilometers are fairly low on that, but we never, that's an old report, so we don't know what's available.
That's correct, yeah.
Oh, okay, so this information isn't real valuable right now.
Yeah, we just want to let you know that we did look at some options. It gives you an idea in terms of pricing, what we might inspect, and gives you an idea also in terms of delivery timelines. But basically what I guess depends on the direction that we receive. For those used buses, it just depends on how quick we act on holding these buses and purchasing them, because nothing can be held until, let's say, until we make a decision, right? We just reach out to what's available in the market and include that in here. And I guess it depends on what we find at the time of purchase.
Yeah, okay. I was ready to talk about the buses that were on the chart, but we don't know about those, so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Head.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a couple comments again, and some of my colleagues have kind of spoke a little bit about some of the concern piece, and the biggest one being the communication. I can't stress enough how important that is. I look at social media and I see people upset with the city because they're an hour late for work, or their kids are late because the buses aren't running. And again, today we had that. That's one of the things that as a city we have to provide is reliable transit. And so I'm happy to hear that one of these buses will be coming up to a budget. And looking at the timelines of delivery, we need to be very proactive. 2 years to get some of these buses, and we're struggling today. Like, since I've been on council, we've had nothing but challenges with our bus services, and still having those same challenges. I could appreciate we're getting more buses, but what good is that when they're not able to run? And leasing isn't always the best option. I think having to buy these buses might be the best for the residents in the long run. I don't like the fact that we have to rely on and be dependent, comments across the floor, on a third party. I mean, we would have more control on the communication, on the routes, on the timeliness of these reliability of these services if we had more say as a city, as a municipality. And a perfect example is our bylaw services. We've seen some great movement in some of these complaints that we get from the residents about some of the issues around the city. So I would assume that having this in the city and control under the public works could be a benefit to us moving forward. I'm a little disappointed that we're only having the one coming to city council, because I think we need to do more for this in this regard. I would like to see some other options and not just the one buying. I think we need to take a drastic look at our bus services and ensure that we have reliability moving forward for all our residents. So I'll keep my comments there. I'm not supporting this motion because I think I'd like to see a little bit more done than receiving the file.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Chair Adlon.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. My question is, what are your thoughts about regarding the possibility of an electronic bus where we would not then have to pay for gas?
Go ahead.
The electric buses option is also included. Those ones, they come at a high price, almost over $1 million, as opposed to $600,000 or $700,000.
And do we know what kind of cost savings we might see in terms of what we pay for gas for each bus each year?
No, we have not done a comparison review at this stage.
Do you know if at budget time, if we might be able to know at that time the estimate of what we're paying for gas for one bus? Or an average bus?
Like how much an average bus uses of
Yes.
like gas usage basically per month or so. That's something probably we can provide you with an average. Maybe it'll be some old data, because as you see, since April 2021, the service has been interrupted quite a bit, but probably we can work on getting you an average from previous years.
Thanks. I would find it interesting as it looks as though a gas-using bus is about $700,000 for a new one, compared to perhaps around $1 million for an electric bus. It'd be interesting to see the comparison with gas usage. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question, continuing on the communication portion, and it's for the Director of Corporate Services. Today I noticed on the city webpage the transit update, and on that transit update it talked about when the buses are running. It had a more detailed description, but it also asked residents to sign up for push notifications that allow you to receive from the city any transit news. I just want to clarify that I read that correctly, and that also encouraging our residents to who use the services to download Transit Live. Was that correct? Go ahead, Director.
Yes, that's correct. So there's two kind of applications that you can use to see where the buses are at. So the first is, these are email updates, so you can subscribe to a list, and every time there's an update, it'll get emailed to you. And then there's Transit Live, which is a link. You'd have to bookmark the link. That's how that works. And you can, once you click on it, you'll see a live map of where that particular bus is in the city. And you can see it moving along the routes.
Okay, so we're encouraging our residents to go onto the city webpage if they're using the transit, and they can receive the push notification. As soon as it's updated on the webpage, they will receive an update.
Absolutely. That's the best way to get the most recent updates on the transit system.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else? Any other discussions? No. With that, let's move to a vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, there it is. The vote is now open. Councillor Lennox up.
In favor.
Thank you. The vote is closed. The vote carries. There's no unfinished business. And finally, we need the last. Councillor Head.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll move the motion to adjourn.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you.
In favor.
Good night, everyone.